Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into Unfucking Your Mind, which is a book that's been making some waves.
Yeah, it's a book that's really kind of tackling this idea of what it means to be a man in like the modern world.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of guys are struggling with these days, with all the changes and the shifting, gender roles and expectations.
Yeah, like all the stuff about toxic masculinity and all this stuff. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a pushback against that, reclaiming masculinity kind of thing.
Right. And what's interesting about this book is that it doesn't shy away from some of the more controversial
Yeah.
topics, right? Like it dives straight into this idea of a war on masculinity.
Yeah, it's pretty upfront about it.
Yeah, and suggesting that there's this kind of deliberate effort to undermine men's confidence
Yep.
and make them question their instincts.
Yeah, like their inherent nature, like the things that are kind of hardwired into them.
Right. And it kind of makes you think about, all the messages that guys are getting from society, from the media.
Yeah, like what are you supposed to be? Are you supposed to be this kind of sensitive, metrosexual kind of guy? Or are you supposed to be this, strong, silent type?
Yeah, it's confusing, right?
Yeah, it's a mixed message for sure.
And this isn't just some, abstract societal critique. The book really gets into like the nitty-gritty of how this impacts relationships, family structures, even a man's financial standing.
Yeah, it gets pretty personal. It talks about like divorce courts and how men are often disadvantaged in those situations.
Yeah, and the statistics they cite are pretty alarming.
Yeah.
Like the fact that men make up the vast majority of alimony payers.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And then there's this whole thing about the boy crisis.
Mm.
The idea that boys are struggling in the education system.
Yeah, like they're not being served well by the way schools are set up.
Right. And they're being told to suppress their natural energy and competitiveness,
Mm.
which, can ultimately impact their self-esteem and their ability to thrive.
Yeah, they're kind of being told to be more like girls in a lot of ways.
Right. And it's interesting because the book doesn't just, encourage men to reflect on these challenges. It really is a call to action, you know?
Yeah, it's like, okay, so what do we do about it?
Exactly. They offer some really concrete advice on how men can reclaim their masculinity.
Yeah, like practical steps you can
Yeah.
take.
Things like, embracing their strengths, defining their purpose, building resilience.
Yeah, and rediscovering those classic masculine virtues like courage, strength, honor, the things that have kind of been lost along the way.
Right. And there's this really fascinating emphasis on the red pill concept, you know?
Yeah, the idea of seeing the world without the filter of political correctness,
Right.
like waking up to reality.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, hey, open your eyes and see the world as it did. It is not how you've been told it should be.
Right, and that ties into their critique of feminism, too.
Oh, yeah, they definitely go there.
Yeah, they acknowledge the validity of like initial feminist goals, like equal pay and stuff, but they argue that the movement has gone too far.
Like it's kind of swung the pendulum too far in the other direction.
Yeah, they say it's trying to erase all distinctions between men and women, and that's just not realistic.
Right, because there are biological differences. You can't just ignore those.
Exactly. And they point to things like divorce laws as an example, where they say that the system often favors women and leaves men feeling unjustly penalized.
Yeah. And they also talk about how boys are treated in education. They say the system rewards qualities that typically favor girls and discourages boys' natural energy and competitive spirit.
Yeah, it's like they're being set up to fail in a way.
And that can be incredibly damaging to their self-esteem and their sense of identity.
Yeah, it's like they're being told that being a boy is somehow wrong.
Right. And that brings us to like a core theme of the book,
Yeah.
the importance of men finding their purpose, not just in their careers, but in life as a whole.
Yeah, finding that sense of meaning and direction.
Right. And they suggest that, identifying your passions, setting goals that are aligned with your values, achieving financial independence, these are all critical steps in reclaiming your autonomy.
Yeah, taking control of your life, just finding your own path.
Exactly. And they also emphasize physical fitness as a key element.
Yeah, getting in shape, taking care of your body.
It's not just about aesthetics, though, right?
No, it's about building mental toughness and resilience, like being able to handle the challenges that life throws at you.
And they advocate for, incorporating exercise that really pushes you to your limits,
Hmm.
whether it's weightlifting or, finding a routine that works for you.
Yeah, finding something that you enjoy and that you can stick with.
Right. And they highlight how, physical strength can translate to mental and emotional strength.
Yeah, it's all connected.
And they even delve into like the spiritual side of things.
Oh, yeah. They talk about how men are facing a spiritual crisis in the modern world.
Right. And they suggest that, reconnecting with faith can provide a sense of purpose and direction that's missing for a lot of men.
Yeah, finding something to believe in, something bigger than yourself.
Right. So it's not just about physical strength. It's about finding that inner strength and sense of meaning too.
Exactly.
And this leads to a really fascinating chapter on emotional manipulation,
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
where they argue that men are often targeted because society conditions them to avoid confrontation and to be nice guys.
Yeah, and that makes them easy prey for manipulators.
Right. And they give some pretty startling examples of these manipulation tactics. It's really eye-opening stuff.
Yeah, it's like, wow, I've totally been there.
And what's great is that they offer practical advice on how to recognize these patterns and protect yourself.
Yeah, like setting boundaries, assertive communication, walking away from toxic relationships.
Right. It's about empowering men to take control of their emotional well-being.
Exactly.
And they connect this to a broader discussion of power dynamics in relationships, stressing that healthy relationships are based on mutual respect, not manipulation or control.
Yeah, it's about being equals.
Right. And they suggest that men need to reclaim their anger.
Ooh, that's a spicy one.
Right. But not in an aggressive way.
It's about healthy anger.
Right. As a healthy emotion that can safeguard against being taken advantage of.
Yeah, like knowing when to stand up for yourself.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about their take on raising the next generation of strong men.
Yeah, how do we raise boys to be good men in this crazy world?
Right. This is a topic that really hits home for me. They argue that fathers need to be actively involved in their sons' lives, serving as positive role models.
Yeah, being a good example.
Right, and teaching them these essential masculine virtues that are often lacking in today's world.
Yeah, like courage and responsibility and all that good stuff.
Right, and they offer practical advice, encouraging fathers to, engage their sons in sports, assign responsibilities, instill a strong work ethic.
Yeah, give them chores. Make them work hard.
Right, and they highlight the importance of open communication, discussing challenges, relationships, what it means to be a good man in today's complex world.
Yeah, having those tough conversations.
Right, and they stress the need for teaching boys respect for women, responsibility for their actions, the courage to stand up for their beliefs.
Yeah, raising good men who are also good people.
Exactly. It's about being that counterbalance to the messages they might be receiving elsewhere.
Yeah, like from the media or from school.
Right. Providing a strong masculine figure they can learn from and emulate.
Yeah, someone to look up to.
Exactly. Now let's dive into one of the most compelling sections of the book, their exploration of the role of physical fitness in shaping masculinity.
Yeah, this is where they really get into the nitty-gritty of working out.
Right. They argue that physical strength goes beyond vanity. It's about building discipline, resilience, embodying a strong masculine presence.
Yeah, it's about more than just looking good.
Right. And they discuss how fitness can boost confidence, reduce stress, improve mental clarity, even enhance sleep.
Yeah, it's good for your mind and body.
And they don't shy away from the fact that physical fitness can increase attractiveness and impact performance in intimate relationships.
Oh, yeah, they definitely talk about that.
Right. And they argue that there's even a spiritual dimension to physical fitness. That pushing your limits reveals your inner strength and capacity for self-control.
Yeah, like testing your limits, finding out what you're made of.
Right. It's not about achieving some unattainable ideal. It's about taking pride in your body and developing mental toughness through physical challenges.
Yeah, pushing yourself to be the best you can be.
Exactly. Now that ties directly into their discussion of financial responsibility.
Yeah, money matters.
Right. They argue that financial stability is about more than just money. It's about freedom and control over your life.
Yeah, being able to make your own choices.
Right. It's about providing for yourself and your family, pursuing goals without limitations, having the agency to make your own choices.
Yeah, not being beholden to anyone.
Right. And they offer practical advice on budgeting, saving, investing, even starting your own business.
Yeah, becoming financially independent.
Right. And they emphasize the importance of a strong work ethic and taking responsibility for your financial well-being.
Yeah. Yeah, not relying on handouts or anything like that.
Right. It's fascinating how they connect financial responsibility to a sense of morality.
Oh, yeah. They talk about how it's a form of self-respect and respect for those you care about.
Right. It's about being a responsible adult.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about their perspective on the modern workplace.
Oh, yeah. The corporate jungle.
Right. They argue that traditional masculinity is increasingly unwelcome,
Mm.
with men constantly being told to be more sensitive, collaborative, less assertive.
Yeah, like don't be too aggressive, don't be
Mm.
too competitive.
Right. And they attribute this partly to the rise of political correctness,
Yeah.
where men are afraid to speak their minds or assert themselves for fear of causing offense.
Yeah, like walking on eggshells all the time.
Right. And they also point to the growing presence of women in leadership, suggesting it's led to a more feminized work culture.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right. It's a complex issue, and I
Yeah.
think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, we don't want to go back to the old boys club days.
Right, but they're not advocating for excluding women or anything like that. They're just highlighting the need for balance in the workplace.
Yeah, like recognizing the value of both masculine and feminine qualities.
Right, and they encourage men to be assertive about their needs in the workplace,
Yeah.
to speak up against marginalization and to find ways to express their masculinity authentically and respectfully.
Yeah, like being true to yourself, but also being professional.
Right, and they also stress the importance of finding mentors and building supportive networks with other men who understand the challenges they face.
Yeah, having that brotherhood that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Now let's move on to a topic that's generating a lot of discussion these days, free speech, particularly as it relates to men.
Oh, yeah, that's a hot button issue.
Right. They argue that free speech is under attack, especially from men who express views that challenge the prevailing narrative.
Yeah, like if you say something that goes against the grain, you're likely to get shut down.
Right. And they point to social media censorship, the silencing of dissenting voices in academia, the tendency to label any opposing opinion as hate speech.
Yeah, it's like you're not allowed to have a different opinion anymore.
Right. And they connect this to the broader war on masculinity, suggesting that suppressing free speech is another way to silence men and prevent them from questioning the status quo.
Yeah, it's about controlling the narrative.
Right. And they urge men to be courageous in speaking their truth, even when it's unpopular.
Yeah, don't be afraid to speak your mind.
Right. And to resist attempts to silence them.
Yeah, stand up for your right to free speech.
And they also encourage men to support each other, create platforms for open dialogue, find ways to amplify their voices.
Yeah, like building a movement.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's discuss their take on brotherhood, something that seems to be increasingly rare in men's lives today.
Yeah, that sense of camaraderie and connection.
Right. This chapter really resonated with me because they talk about that deep, meaningful connection with other men that's often missing.
Yeah, like that feeling of having each other's backs.
Right. They argue that brotherhood is essential for men's emotional well-being, for their sense of purpose, for navigating life's challenges.
Yeah, it's like having a built-in support system.
Right. They talk about brotherhood providing a sense of belonging, support camaraderie that's hard to find elsewhere.
Yeah, like a tribe or a band of brothers.
Right. And they point to the military as a prime example, where shared experiences of hardship and sacrifice forge incredibly strong bonds.
Yeah, going through something tough together really brings people closer.
Right. But they also suggest that brotherhood can be cultivated in other areas of life, like sports hobbies, even just spending quality time together.
Yeah, just hanging out with your buddies.
Right. It's about being intentional, reaching out to other men, prioritizing those face-to-face interactions that build genuine connections.
Yeah, making time for those relationships.
Right. They're saying, don't go it alone, find your tribe, build those bonds of support. That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we need each other.
Exactly. And that's what brotherhood is all about. Having each other's backs, supporting each other through thick and thin, knowing you're not alone.
Absolutely. So, picking up where we left off talking about the brotherhood, it's like this really powerful thing. And this book kind of gets into this idea of the feminization of society.
Yeah, and they make it clear it's not about, women having rights or opportunities. That's a good thing. It's more about like this subtle shift where masculine traits are kind of like looked down on.
Yeah, like being assertive or competitive. It's like celebrated in girls, but then in boys, it's like, oh no, you got to chill out.
Yeah, or like being told to be more sensitive and in touch with your feelings all the time. It's like, are we giving mixed messages here?
Yeah, and this book argues it's happening everywhere. Work, family, even the media.
They even say it's like contributing to the decline of Western civilization. It's a pretty big claim.
Yeah, it is. And, I don't know if I agree with all that, but it's something to think about. How do we find that balance?
Yeah, like valuing both masculine and feminine qualities without like demonizing either one.
Exactly. And it goes back to that idea of men taking responsibility. Like waking up and saying, okay, how do I be a man in this world?
Yeah, like reclaiming those classic virtues, strength, courage, honor.
Yeah, and expressing those in a way that's authentic and respectful.
Right. It's not about being some like caricature of masculinity.
No, it's about finding your own way.
Now, one thing they get into that I thought was really interesting is the impact of modern feminism on relationships.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one.
And they talk about this idea of the covert contract.
Like the unspoken rules of the game.
Right. And how that's kind of been disrupted by this push for gender equality.
Yeah, and they're not saying equality is bad, but it's like the reality is it's created some confusion.
Yeah, and they talk about how men are still expected to be the providers even when women work.
And then you've got the challenges men face in divorce court.
Yeah, they really go into that. It's like the system is stacked against them in a lot of ways.
And it creates this fear for men. Like, is it even worth getting married?
It's like they're being punished for following the traditional rules, but then those rules don't apply anymore.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in.
And they say it's creating a generation of men who are just disillusioned about relationships.
Yeah, and unsure of their place in the world.
It's a lot to think about, but I think they bring up some really important points.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation starter.
Now, they also have a chapter on finding your purpose, which I think is something a lot of men struggle with.
Yeah, like what am I doing with my life?
Right, and they make this point that purpose isn't something you find, it's something you create.
You got to go out and make it happen.
Yeah. And they talk about identifying your passions, your strengths, your values.
And then using those to build a life that has meaning.
Yeah. And they emphasize setting goals, taking action, finding mentors.
It's about taking control of your own destiny.
Exactly. Now, one section that I know might be a little controversial is one on understanding female nature.
Yeah, that's always a sensitive topic.
But I think they approach it in a way that's not about, like, stereotyping or anything like that.
Yeah, it's more about understanding the differences between men and women.
Right. And how those differences play out in relationships.
And they talk about things like female hypergamy.
Which is basically the idea that women are attracted to men who are higher status.
Yeah, and they also talk about how women communicate and how men can be more attuned to that.
It's about understanding those nuances so you can build stronger connections.
And they also give some advice for navigating the modern dating scene.
Which can be a minefield, let's be honest.
Yeah, all those apps and stuff, it's a whole different world.
Right, and they say you got to focus on self-improvement, developing social skills, being confident and assertive.
And being selective about who you choose as a partner.
Yeah, it's not about playing the game, it's about being the prize.
Exactly.
Now, another chapter that I think is really important is the one on building resilience.
Yeah, that's key in today's world.
They talk about developing that mental and emotional strength to overcome adversity.
Yeah, like being able to bounce back from setbacks.
Right, and they give some practical strategies for doing that, like developing a positive mindset, practicing gratitude, setting realistic goals, building strong support systems.
And taking care of your physical health, too.
Yeah, exercise, nutrition, sleep, all that good stuff.
And they also talk about emotional regulation. Learning to manage stress, anger, anxiety.
Yeah, it's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about finding healthy ways to express them.
And they also encourage men to seek professional help when needed.
Yeah, breaking down that stigma around mental health.
Exactly. Taking care of yourself is important.
Now, one chapter that I found really fascinating was the one on the historical and cultural roots of masculinity.
Yeah, like where did all this come from?
They talk about these ancient archetypes, the warrior, the king, the sage.
And how those have shaped our understanding of what it means to be a man.
They also look at the impact of religion, philosophy, literature.
It's like a history lesson on masculinity.
Yeah, and they argue that understanding this historical context can help men connect with a deeper sense of purpose and meaning.
Yeah, like seeing yourself as part of something bigger.
Exactly. Now, another chapter that I think is really relevant in today's world is the one on navigating a world of political correctness.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
They talk about how political correctness has created this climate of fear and self-censorship.
Yeah, where you're afraid to say anything that might offend someone.
Right. And they say it's stifling open dialogue and honest conversations.
Yeah, it's like everyone's walking on eggshells.
And they give some advice for how to navigate this.
Uh-huh.
Being respectful, but also being assertive and true to your values.
Yeah, finding that balance.
Right. And they encourage men to find their voice, to speak up for what they believe in,
Yeah.
to challenge the status quo when necessary.
Yeah, don't be afraid to stand out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the chapter on understanding and communicating with women.
Ah, yes, the age-old mystery.
Right. And they're not trying to give some, magic formula or anything.
No, it's more about recognizing that men and women communicate differently.
Yeah, and they talk about the nuances of female communication.
Yeah.
You know, how women often use indirect language and nonverbal cues.
Yeah, it's like a whole different language sometimes.
Right, and they emphasize the importance of listening actively, empathizing, validating emotions.
Yeah, really hearing what they're saying.
And they give some practical tips for men who want to improve their communication skills.
Mm.
You know, like asking clarifying questions, reflecting back what they've heard, expressing their own feelings clearly.
Yeah, it's about being present and engaged in the conversation.
Right. And they also talk about nonverbal communication,
Hmm.
you know, eye contact, body language, physical affection.
Yeah, all those subtle cues.
It's about creating a safe and supportive space where both partners feel heard and understood.
Exactly. Good communication is the foundation of any healthy relationship.
Now, one chapter that I found really empowering was the one on embracing your power.
Yeah, owning your masculinity.
They argue that men have been conditioned to downplay their power, to apologize for being men.
Yeah, like shrinking back from who they really are.
And they encourage men to reclaim that power, to step into their leadership roles, to make a positive impact on the world.
Yeah, it's about being a force for good.
Right. And they talk about how men's power lies in their strength, their decisiveness, their protectiveness, their ability to take action.
Yeah, those classic masculine qualities.
But they also emphasize the importance of using power responsibly with integrity and compassion.
It's not about dominating others. It's about using your power to help others.
Exactly. Now, one last chapter that I want to mention is the one on finding your tribe.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with good people.
They talk about the importance of finding like-minded individuals who support your growth and share your values.
Yeah, finding your people.
Right. And they say this can provide a sense of belonging, camaraderie, purpose.
Yeah, like a brotherhood.
Exactly. And
Right.
they suggest you can find your tribe through shared interests, hobbies, online communities.
Yeah, there are all sorts of ways to connect with people these days.
Right. And they emphasize the importance of building strong connections with other men who will challenge you, support you, help you become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, having those guys in your corner who will always have your back.
Exactly. It's about creating a brotherhood of men who are on a similar journey, who understand the challenges you face, who will be there for you no matter what.
That's what it's all about.
So we've been unpacking a lot from Unfaking Your Mind, you know, some heavy stuff about the challenges guys are up against these days. But I'm really curious what hit you in those last chapters, like what really stuck with you?
Yeah. You know, there's a lot to digest in this book, but that whole thing about personal transformation, man, that's where it's at. Like they're saying, you can't wait for the world to change. Got to start with yourself.
Yeah, it's that whole like be the change you want to see kind of thing.
Exactly. And they give you like a blueprint. You know, work on yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. They even talk about developing a strong work ethic, setting boundaries, communicating better.
Yeah, it's like they're giving you the tools to become a better, stronger man.
And one of the big tools is that physical fitness piece, you know?
Oh, yeah, they're big on that.
They're not just saying hit the gym. It's like connecting that physical strength to mental toughness, self-discipline, like pushing yourself physically translates to overcoming challenges in other areas.
Yeah, that whole like iron sharpens iron thing, you know?
Exactly. Like facing those physical challenges builds resilience, that inner strength.
And it ties into that financial independence piece too.
Oh, yeah. Money matters.
They're saying it's not just about having money. It's about having control over your life.
Yeah, making your own choices, providing for yourself and your family, pursuing your goals without being held back.
And they give some solid advice too. You know, budgeting, saving, investing, even starting a business.
Taking control of your finances, it's like a form of self-respect.
Yeah, being responsible for yourself and those you care about. Now, another thing they hit hard is that whole finding your purpose thing, not just in your career, but in life.
Yeah, like what's your mission? What gets you fired up?
And they're saying it's not something you just stumble upon, it's something you cultivate. Figure out your passions, your strengths, what you value.
And then build a life that reflects that.
Yeah, setting goals, taking action, finding mentors who inspire you.
It's about taking ownership of your life, making it meaningful.
Now, this part got me thinking, that whole spirituality piece, you know?
Yeah, it's like a lot of guys are feeling lost these days, like something's missing.
And they're saying reconnecting with faith can help, you know, finding that sense of direction, that moral grounding.
Yeah, connecting to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And they're not saying it has to be traditional religion, you know?
No, it's about finding what works for you, whether it's philosophy, nature, whatever gives you that sense of meaning.
Yeah, finding that anchor that gives your life purpose. And then there's that whole brotherhood thing,
No.
you know?
Yeah, connecting with other men, building those strong bonds.
They're saying it's essential for men's well-being, that sense of belonging.
Like those guys in the military, going through hell together creates unbreakable bonds.
But it's not just the military.
Hmm.
It's finding those guys in your life who you can connect with.
Sharing hobbies, sports, just hanging out, talking about life.
Being intentional about building those relationships. Having those guys in your corner.
Knowing you're not alone in this.
Exactly. And I think that's a powerful message to end on, this book, Unfucking Your Mind. It's a call to action. It's about taking those insights and making them real in your life.
Yeah, stepping up, embracing the challenges, owning your masculinity.
And finding that purpose.
Yeah.
Creating a life that's meaningful and fulfilling.
And knowing you're not alone. There are other guys out there going through the same thing.
So if you're ready to dive deeper, check out Unfucking Your Mind. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
It's a book that'll make you think, challenge you, maybe even change your perspective.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking the truth.